Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com.
This hourly segment is brought to you by Goldilocks, offering 24/7 security solutions for homes and businesses. Call them today at 708-889-5600.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. A seminal work by our next guest turned 25. I didn't even realize it's been 25 years since Theodore Dalrymple wrote Life at the Bottom, the Worldview That Makes the Underclass. And a piece in City Journal by Robert Henderson about said book and said author. Dalrymple is indispensable because he refuses to romanticize the poor or celebrate intellectual rebellion. He writes about people who trade stability for fleeting pleasures and a culture that cheers them on. Without pity or platitude, he cuts through the fog of jargon, reminding us that stability is fragile, that tradition is wisdom distilled through trial, and that humans are capable of virtue only when we believe we should be. As Life at the Bottom turns 25, its warnings feel more urgent than ever, writes Henderson. Indeed, they do. So let's get right to it. Theodore Dalrymple is a retired physician and psychiatrist who worked in a general hospital and prison in England, currently a contributing editor at City Journal. His new books, the one I just mentioned, Life at the Bottom, The Worldview That Makes the Underclass, 25th Anniversary Edition, which is available now. And this is intriguing. There's a good write-up on it by Dalrymple, New Criterion. The book is Agatha Christie and the Metaphysics of Murder, which is available in June. Theodore Dalrymple, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you for asking me.
The indulgence of the view that makes the underclass. We just discussed this briefly last hour, but you probably missed it. So let me give you this clip. Karen Bass, she's the mayor of Los Angeles. And she's taking this approach to dealing with meth addicts because, you can't be successful if you don't have a pearly white smile. Take a listen.
How many people who are unhoused that you meet have no teeth at all? They don't have teeth. Why? Because meth rots your teeth. You can't succeed without teeth. So there needs to be comprehensive health care provided to people.
Teeth is, pearly white's a God-given right, Theodore.
Yeah, well, George Washington didn't have any teeth either, actually.
Yes, that wouldn't, yes.
He had false teeth. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
times have changed, of course.
Yes, I mean, but that's that approach to something like homelessness and drug addiction. I mean, it speaks to a larger worldview that you tackle in the 25th anniversary.
Yeah, of course. What it implies is the people who have done this to themselves are actually the victim, what we must always do is disguise from them their own part in their situation, and it is up to us to save them.
And that's a worldview that really punctuates so much of Western policy towards that population.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's actually rather dehumanizing, because what you're saying is that they played no part in their situation. It's also a sign of a lack of compassion, actually, because they believe that if you say to someone, you are partly responsible for your own situation, or even largely responsible for your own situation, which is the case, then what you're doing is saying, depart my sight, I will have nothing further to do with you, I won't try to help you or do anything for you. So either you must be totally innocent or totally guilty. But of course, there is something, as most of us know, there are intermediate stages between total guilt and total innocence. So it's a very unsubtle view of life.
Well, and it seems to me, I mean, it's not exclusive, but it's been imposed on society writ large, not by the homeless meth addict in L.A., but by the Karen Basses of the world and her financiers. It's very much along the lines of what Charles Murray observed in his book Coming Apart, which is that these elite leftists don't believe in theory what they do in practice.
Yeah, and of course there becomes a large vested interest in that particular view of the world. So that, for example, if you take the National Institute on Drug Abuse, it used to, I don't know how far it still does, I haven't looked recently, but it used to say that heroin addiction is a chronic relapsing brain disease, and that's all. Nothing else. In other words, it's a bit like Parkinson's disease or multiple sclerosis. And there's a difference between these conditions, which is a lie. It's ineffective. It's meaning to a heroin addict, actually, because, of course, if you say you're just a victim of a chronic relapsing brain disorder, well, of course, he expects the doctor to cure him of it. And he knows perfectly well that is not possible. Right,
and but the elite view too. I mean, it's the sort of noblesse oblige of it's really an arrogant view, as you say. It's phony empathy, it's phony compassion, and one aspect of it is particularly galling, which is essentially to believe that, well, the person who is not doing as well as I am is not doing as well as I am just because they're not me. So how could you expect somebody to have all the talent and another person or other people to have all the talent and ability that me and my friends have? It's just not possible.
Yes. Well, I mean, what you're saying is that they're a different kind of being from me. In fact, no one actually can think of himself as he thinks of these people. I mean, no one believes that he has no control over his own life, but he thinks that somebody else has no control over his own life. Of course, there are situations in which people have very little control of their health. That actually exists. But that's not the typical position of most people in our society.
And so, I mean, just thinking about Life at the Bottom, when you wrote it 25 years ago, or preceding its publication, probably a couple years prior to that, I'm sure, and where we are today in the West, what sort of reflections do you have?
Well, of course, I'm slightly out of the world that I was writing about, so I had a very intimate contact, of course, with the kind of people I was describing, dealing with drug addicts and prisoners and people who had very degraded, actually, lives. And I no longer do because I'm retired. But from what I read, from what I see, things are certainly no better. Whether they're worse or not, I can't actually say, but they were catastrophically horrible 25 years ago. I should rather doubt. I can't see why they should have got very much better.
I wanted to get to your other book too, just because it's such an interesting area of inquiry and observation. Agatha Christie and the Metaphysics of Murder. Why did you decide to do something akin to a meta-analysis of Agatha Christie's work?
Well, what I did actually was to take a book more or less at random from her oeuvre and and show that she was a highly informed, very intelligent person who had ideas about society and psychology that were remarkably sophisticated. Though, of course, it's easy to skate over them by just trying to find out who done it. In fact, she was an extremely clever, well-informed woman. She knew a great deal about psychology and psychiatry. She was very knowledgeable about toxicology. I just took one at random, and it turned out to be a good choice, as it happens, and analyzed all the philosophical, sociological, psychological ideas that there were in it. I was very impressed by her, by the degree of her knowledge and the degree of her sophistication. And also, of course, she was very funny. She was a social satirist. So she was more than just a writer of whodunit.
And the book you're referring to is The Murder of Roger Ackroyd?
No, I chose one that is not well known, not particularly well known. They do it with mirrors. And as I said, I chose it at random. I had a copy. I'd never read it. And I chose it at random to illustrate how sophisticated a woman, how knowledgeable she was. I took it, and I was rewarded because it was actually a very good choice. Although it's not her best book. I don't claim it's the best book, and it's not one of her best-known books either. Oh,
yeah, no, I conflated the two. I was just referring to your new Criterion piece. But you mentioned The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, just to give a concrete example. One of the things that you write about is, and just to give people like a sense of like her psychological insight and, you know, how it gets you to think beyond the whodunit part. You write about her description in the Murder of Roger Ackroyd when Caroline says to her brother that Mrs. Ferrars must have taken a suicidal dose of a drug. It's odd when you have a secret belief of your own which you do not want to acknowledge. The voicing of it by someone else will rouse you to a fury of denial. And it's like that is really a keen insight into, you know, the human psyche.
Yes, oh yes. I mean, it's better than anything in Freud, actually. And also, it's complicated because the man who says that, who utters that truth, is actually lying at the same time. So there are layers within layers of this psychology, because of course he turns out to be the murderer. So, in other words, her view of the human mind is a highly sophisticated and very realistic one.
And, you know, and I mean, especially since you were a practitioner as a prison psychiatrist, you know, how did, you know, reviewing Agatha Christie's fiction, you know, call to mind your own professional experience?
Well, she was very skeptical about psychiatric explanations of behavior. In the other book that I was talking about in The Metaphysics of Murder, she satirizes the psychiatry of the time, which was the early 1950s, which claimed to explain all human behavior when actually it explained very little or nothing, and departed completely from common sense. So she was a common sense psychologist, and as a highly intelligent and sophisticated one. So she reflected on her own psychology, and she didn't accept absurd theories. And the the deformation of psychiatry and psychology is that they accepted large theories which actually put a lens between people's thoughts and themselves. So people, as a result of psychology, people became objects of themselves rather than subjects. So they started talking about themselves as if they were someone else.
Right. And it's funny because as you observed that she considered herself, her own work, middle brow. But when you start digging into it and pulling out some of the passages that you pulled out, and you see, as you said, there are layers upon layers.
Yes. So she was she didn't make exaggerated claims for herself, unlike most psychologists.
Before I let you go, just in merry old England, since that's where you spent your career, Keir Starmer has responded to the beating his Labour Party took at the polls in local elections the other week by proposing to renationalize British steel and address people's, and save jobs, quote unquote, and address people's economic concerns in that way. How do you think that's going to go?
Well, of course, it's going to lead to further impoverishment, as it always does. But I'm afraid bad ideas never die.
And what is your sort of current best outlook for Western Europe's near future?
Well, I'm not very optimistic. I'm most pessimistic about Britain. Actually, I think Britain is the most corrupt country in Europe. I don't mean it's corrupt in the sense that people are taking bribes and so on. It's much, much worse than that. It's corrupted morally and psychologically. And what I fear is that a very large proportion of the population wants actually the other part of the population to subsidize it, and they regard that as justice.
Theodore Dalrymple, retired physician and psychiatrist who worked in a general hospital and prison in England, currently contributing to City Journal. The new book, Agatha Christie and the Metaphysics of Murder, that's available June 9th. The 25th edition of Life at the Bottom is available now. Life at the Bottom, the worldview that makes the underclass. Theodore Dalrymple, thank you for joining us as always. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much indeed.
And he joined us on the alphawealthgroup.com answer line.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
You need a construction company, but who?
Call Croscom.